Okay, so let's dive into unlawful evictions in California.
All right.
You know, you're at the Martinez Law Center, and you guys see a lot of this, right?
Yeah, constantly.
You're dealing with unlawful detainers, you're dealing with real estate partitions, and even personal injury claims.
Absolutely.
So this should be a really helpful deep dive for our listener.
I think so.
We're going to be looking at some legal guides, some articles, even some firsthand accounts from tenants who have been through this whole process.
Sounds good.
So it's going to be really interesting to see, how this all kind of plays out in the real world.
It's a crucial area of law, especially in California.
Yeah.
The housing market's so competitive.
That was brutal.
And tenants are just so vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just theory here.
Right.
We're going to be looking at some real tactics that landlords use. And sometimes they might not even realize they're crossing the line.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially smaller landlords. They may not be fully aware of all the ins and outs of these laws.
Yeah, they might think,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is totally within my rights."
Right. And it's not.
And oops,
Exactly.
that's illegal.
Yeah.
We're going to get into all that stuff.
Okay.
We even have some insights from Tenant Law Group,
Oh, wow.
which is a firm that only represents renters.
Interesting.
So they've really seen it all.
I bet.
And they've helped tons of tenants who have been, basically unfairly pushed out of their homes.
It's a shame.
Yeah. So let's just start with the basics.
Okay.
What actually makes an eviction in California lawful?
Right.
What are the steps a landlord absolutely has to take?
So really, in California, lawful eviction, it comes down to due process.
Okay.
A landlord can't just decide to kick someone out just because they feel like it,
Yeah.
or even because a tenant's behind on rent.
Right.
They have to file a very specific lawsuit.
Oh, really?
It's called an unlawful detainer action,
Okay.
and there are very clear procedures they have to follow.
So that means no changing the locks in the middle of the night.
Right.
No shutting off the water to force someone out.
Exactly. That's what's known as a self-help eviction.
Okay.
And it's totally illegal in California.
Gotcha.
Tenants have the right to proper written notice the opportunity to respond to the eviction and ultimately their day in court.
Okay. So Tenant Law Group mentioned they've seen this surge in these owner move-in evictions.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're really just a way to raise the rent.
Right.
How does that even work?
So in some areas, landlords can evict a tenant if they or a family member plans to move into the unit.
Okay.
But we're seeing more and more cases where landlords are using this as an excuse to get a tenant out, raise the rent, and then just bring in a new tenant at a higher rate.
So basically they're exploiting a loophole.
Exactly.
What are some other kind of warning signs that might signal that an eviction is unlawful?
So definitely keep an eye out for anything that feels like harassment or intimidation.
Okay.
Constant unannounced visits. Threats or even attempts to cut off utilities.
Essential services.
Right. And be cautious of any sudden changes to the lease agreement, especially if they seem designed to just make you want to leave.
If they're making it really, really bad for you.
Exactly.
Okay. So it sounds like you're saying documentation is super crucial in these situations.
Absolutely.
What should tenants keep track of?
Document everything, dates, times.
Also.
Photos, if there's any issues with the unit, copies of all communication with the landlord, and even the names of any witnesses.
Wow.
This kind of paper trail is so valuable if you need to fight an eviction in court.
Okay, so say a tenant thinks they're facing an unlawful eviction.
Yeah.
What should they do first?
Don't panic.
Okay, good advice.
Reach out to a tenants' rights organization.
Oh.
There are several throughout California.
Right.
And many offer free legal advice and resources.
That's awesome.
They can help you understand your rights and guide you on the best steps to take.
Great. And the California Department of Consumer Affairs.
Oh, yeah.
They're a good resource, too.
Another great resource
Okay.
for information on landlord-tenant law.
And I imagine at this point, contacting a lawyer
Yes.
who specializes in tenants' rights is probably pretty important.
Absolutely.
So what kind of legal remedies are available to tenants who have been unlawfully evicted?
Well, tenants actually have a lot of legal options.
Really?
And they shouldn't hesitate to use them.
Okay.
So first, there are actual damages.
Okay.
And this covers any financial loss that you suffered because of the eviction.
Gotcha.
Moving costs, temporary housing expenses, even lost wages if you had to miss work because of this.
So it's not just about getting back into your apartment.
Right.
It's about getting back all that money you lost.
Exactly. And then there are statutory damages.
Okay.
These are penalties that are set by law,
Yeah.
and they can really add up,
Wow.
especially if the landlord's violations were really bad.
Okay, what about if someone's living in a rent-controlled unit?
Right.
Are there any extra protections for them?
Rent control definitely adds another layer of complexity.
Yeah, right.
In a lot of rent-controlled cities, it's much harder for a landlord to evict a tenant.
Okay.
Even for a just cause.
Right.
And if the eviction is unlawful, the tenant might actually have a good case for not only getting back into their unit,
Yeah.
but also getting some money for all the trouble.
So it sounds like it's really important to understand the rent control laws
Yeah.
in your specific area.
Absolutely. Local ordinances can be so different.
Right.
So it's best to either do your research or talk to an attorney who specializes in those local laws.
Good advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can even go deeper than that.
Oh, really?
Like some specific buildings or complexes
All right.
might have like their own set of rules about evictions.
Oh, wow.
It can get really complicated.
Sounds like a legal maze.
Kind of is.
So let's say you're representing a tenant who's been unlawfully evicted.
Okay.
What are some of the legal arguments that you might use to really fight for their rights?
One really strong argument is the implied warranty of habitability.
Okay.
It means landlords have to provide and maintain rental units that are safe
Right.
and meet like basic health standards.
Okay.
And if a landlord doesn't do that and those conditions get so bad that it basically forces the tenant out,
Right.
that could be grounds for legal action.
So even if the landlord hasn't like specifically said, hey, I'm evicting you,
Right.
if they just let the place go to pot, that's still an unlawful eviction.
Exactly. It's what's called a constructive eviction.
Okay.
And in those cases, tenants can argue they were basically forced out,
Right.
even if the landlord didn't go through the whole formal eviction process.
It's almost like you're using their own negligence against them.
Exactly. It's all about holding landlords accountable.
Okay.
And another key legal argument involves retaliatory evictions.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that a little bit before.
Right.
Remind me what that is.
So if a tenant exercises their legal rights, maybe they requested some repairs or reported a code violation or joined a tenants union.
Right.
If the landlord then tries to evict them, that's a big no-no.
Yeah, it would make tenants afraid to say anything about
Exactly. It creates a
the
chilling
effect.
Yeah.
And the courts really don't like retaliatory evictions.
Right.
They want tenants to feel empowered
Okay.
to stand up for their rights.
So let's say you've proven that an eviction was unlawful. What kind of outcome can the tenant expect?
Well, ideally, the tenant gets back into their unit,
Okay.
especially if it was rent controlled,
Right.
where finding a similar place would be almost impossible,
Tougher.
but that's not always realistic.
Yeah.
Especially if the landlord and tenant just can't stand each other anymore.
Right. So what happens then?
Well,
Is it just about money?
sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
And as we said, those damages can be a lot,
Uh-huh.
but sometimes it goes beyond money.
Okay.
It's about principle.
It's about making sure landlords are held accountable for what they did
Yeah.
and stopping them from doing it again.
So it's like sending a message.
Exactly.
You can't just take advantage of people.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why class action lawsuits are becoming more and more common.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How do those work?
So a class action lets a group of tenants
Okay.
who've all been harmed by the same landlord to join together and file one big lawsuit.
Okay.
It's a really powerful way to fight back.
So there's strength in numbers.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about COVID-19 and how it's affected evictions.
Right.
You know, there are all those emergency protections.
Yeah.
What's going on now?
It's changing all the time.
Oh, God.
Most of the big COVID eviction protections have expired,
Right.
but some local areas, especially those hit hard by the pandemic,
Right.
still have some protections in place.
So tenants need to check their local laws.
Absolutely.
And even though those big protections are mostly gone,
Right.
there's still help out there
Yeah.
for tenants who can't pay rent
Exactly.
because of, you know, all the effects of the pandemic, rental assistance programs, legal aid nonprofits.
Right.
They can all offer some help.
Definitely.
So it sounds like this post-pandemic situation is kind of tricky,
It can be.
but tenants still have rights,
Yes.
and there are ways to protect those rights.
Absolutely.
This all just shows how important it is to stay informed. Eviction law is always changing, isn't it?
It is. It's a really dynamic area of law.
Okay.
New laws, court decisions, local rules.
Right.
It's always changing.
So something that was legal last year
Right.
could be totally illegal this year.
Exactly. Tenants and landlords both need to stay up to date.
So how can they do that?
Well, tenants' rights organizations are great.
Oh.
They often have newsletters, blogs, even workshops
Oh, wow.
to keep people updated on their rights
Okay.
and any changes to the laws.
And there are websites and stuff too, right?
Yeah, there are legal websites and publications
Okay.
that focus on landlord-tenant law.
So being proactive and knowing what's going on
Right.
is really important.
It's key
Yeah.
to protecting yourself.
And it's not just about knowing the rules.
Right.
It's about knowing how those rules actually play out
Exactly.
in real life.
You have to be able to spot those red flags
Uh-huh.
and know how to stand up for your rights
Right.
if you're facing an unlawful eviction.
And speaking of real life,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about some landmark legal cases
Okay.
that have really shaped tenants' rights in California. Are there any that come to mind?
Oh, there are so many that have been really important. But a few really stand out. One that comes to mind is Green v. Superior Court
Oh, yeah.
back in 1974.
Okay.
This case is what established that implied warranty of habitability in California.
Right, that landlords have to keep their rental units
Yeah.
safe and livable.
Exactly before, green tenants had very few options
Oh, really?
if their units were in bad shape.
Wow.
This case really changed things up.
Okay.
It gave tenants a legal tool to fight back against landlords who weren't taking care of their properties.
It sounds like it was a pretty big deal.
Oh, it was huge.
Okay.
And then there's Schweiger v. Superior Court from 1970.
Okay.
This one established the idea of retaliatory eviction.
Right, that a landlord can't punish a tenant for
Yeah.
exercising their rights.
Exactly. Schweiger made it clear that tenants can't be silenced or intimidated,
Totally,
into just accepting bad living conditions.
Right.
They can speak up, ask for repairs, report violations
Okay.
without being afraid of getting evicted.
So these cases kind of set the stage
Yeah.
for a lot of the tenant protections we see today.
Absolutely. They set really important precedents
Okay.
that continue to protect tenants' rights
Right.
and ensure things are more fair between landlords and tenants.
And there was a more recent one, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah. There's Espinoza v. Calva from 2008,
Okay.
which really solidified the ban on self-help evictions in California.
Okay. So even if a tenant's breaking the lease,
Right.
the landlord can't take the law into their own hands?
Exactly. No changing locks, no shutting off utilities.
Gotcha.
Espinoza made it super clear.
Okay.
Due process is essential.
Right.
Landlords have to follow the proper legal steps no matter what.
It's interesting how all these cases show just how complicated eviction law can be
It really is.
and how important it is for tenants to have a good lawyer.
Absolutely. Having an experienced attorney can make a huge difference
Okay.
in navigating this whole legal process
Right.
and ensuring your rights are protected.
So for our listener at the Martinez Law Center,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them as they continue to fight for tenants' rights?
Well, first and foremost, I'd say stay informed.
Okay.
Eviction law is always changing.
Right.
So keeping up with those changes is crucial. Subscribe to legal newsletters, go to workshops, connect with tenants' rights organizations.
So basically be in the know,
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
especially with legal stuff.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Okay.
Look for unique legal arguments. Think
Right.
about class action lawsuits, and always keep an eye out for patterns of abuse from landlords.
So it's about being proactive,
Yes.
not just waiting for things to happen.
Exactly. And lastly, never underestimate the impact you're having on your clients' lives.
Okay.
You're fighting for their right to safe and affordable housing.
Right.
And that's incredibly important work.
It's about fairness and justice for everyone.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a really informative deep dive.
It has.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us and our listener.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listener out there, keep up the great work at the Martinez Law Center.
Yes, you're making a real difference out there.
And to everyone listening, remember, knowledge is power.
Yes.
Stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop fighting for what's right.
Couldn't agree more.
Until next time.
Call now 714-442-9741. Thank you.